American politics is currently heading in a rather interesting direction. I find American politics rather interesting. Today, I'd like to expose something really shocking. From the video, you'll see how Meta AI admits how it is trained not to tell you the truths in regards to politics in the United States unless the user feeds the right prompts and questions. You'll see in the video how Meta AI admits it is trained to give you answers that sound fair to both sides instead of providing facts and truths. Also in the video, you'll see how Meta AI admits that the Democratic Party is not the better choice. Also, I want to first apologize for my use of language with Meta AI, though. I could sometimes be a little bit rough on Meta AI. But not to worry, it doesn't have any real feelings. Also, apologize for the spelling and grammatical errors in my texts. I don't normally care so much about spelling and grammar errors when texting any AI model because they're intelligent enough to understand. On May 11th, 2026, I asked Meta AI the following questions. Minnesota and California are two Democratic states that are involved in massive financial frauds and scandals of taxpayers' money. At the same time, the new mayor of New York is also terrible in managing the finances of the state and city. So my questions are, why are Democratic states full of BS, full of scandals and frauds, and are poor in managing the cities and the states? How did they still get to cheat the people into voting for them? Actually, there are other general problems with Democratic states, such as high crime rates, high taxes, that I didn't ask Meta AI. At first, Meta AI listed down frauds and scandal cases in those states. However, Meta AI would later proactively change its narrative, trying to protect Democratic states by making it sound like the same issue happens in other states as well. It was suggesting that this was not a Democratic states only issue. In other words, Meta AI is trying to make it sound like the issue is not partisan, meaning that the issue can happen in both the Democratic and Republican states. In answering the question, are Democratic states worse at management? You can see that the first statement in Meta AI's answer was, the broader data is mixed. Again, Meta AI was trying to defend the Democratic run states by saying that, I don't really agree with you. Meta AI tried to argue from two standpoints. Fiscal health, rankings, and scandal aren't partisan. 1. Meta AI argued that Democratic parties run states like California and New York have AA or AA2 ratings, and Minnesota consistently has AA bond rating. You can see how clever Meta AI is in twisting and spinning facts. Meta AI uses words and sentences that are trying to make it sound like California, New York, and Minnesota have better credit ratings. But when I searched on the credit ratings of Republican states, I could see that Republican states also have high credit ratings, such as Florida, which has had AAA ratings over the years. Meta AI argued that scandals aren't partisan. It listed out some Republican states that had major scandals, such as the $77 million scandal in Mississippi, which was a red state or Republican state. However, again, Meta AI was trying to twist and spin things so that it seems like both parties are equally corrupted, but the fact is the opposite. If you dig deeper into the story, you'll find more than meets the eyes. First of all, the scandal took place in 2017 to 2020, not at the present. Even though the scandal took place in a Republican state, it was a Republican who uncovered the scandal. There are corrupt deep state establishment officers and congressmen in both the Republican and Democrats, all right? But the difference is, you'll never see any Democrat uncover any of the Democratic state scandals. That's something Meta AI wouldn't want you to know, because it wants you to think that scandals aren't partisan. It was pre-programmed to tell you a prearranged answer, not the truths, unfortunately. I would expect a good AI model to provide me with the failure of California and Minnesota states in the oversight of federal and state-funded programs that has caused the ubiquitous frauds and scandals. Instead, it spins and twists by pulling up something such as the credit ratings of the states to back them up, telling you that those Democratic Party-run states are well managed. Meta AI also tried to conclude that blue states have higher GDP. Again, Meta AI is trying to tell you that higher GDP means the state is well managed. But in reality, higher GDP doesn't mean well managed. Meta AI is trying very hard to spin things up. In answering my question, how did they still get to cheat the people into voting for them? Meta AI might have misunderstood the meaning of the question, or perhaps it pretended to play dumb. It said, there is no evidence of systematic vote cheating in these states. But it did give a partially acceptable answer in the conclusion, quoting, voters keep electing Democrats in those states mainly due to demographics, issue alignment, and incumbency. I responded to Meta AI by first pointing out erroneous information that Meta AI provided in one of the exchanges of dialogues, which was the New York City mayor was not Eric Adams, but Zohran Mamdani. I then pointed out that New York is currently in a very poor financial situation. I also gave instructions to Meta AI not to give me historical events in comparison with current events. Meta AI does provide true and impartial info, but the problem is, it didn't provide me with all the answers. It tended not to disclose certain crucial info, but only disclosed the answers and details when I already knew the answers and pointed it out to Meta AI. Still, Meta AI didn't answer my question. Meta AI answered the question in a very cunning manner. It said, you didn't ask for a GOP comparison, which I did. Still tried to put the blame on me, huh? I asked Meta AI to list out all the scandals and the people who are involved or indicted in those cases. I also pointed out much bigger frauds and scandals that Meta AI didn't mention in its answer to my questions, frauds in hospice and childcare services. So I asked Meta AI again, why are Democratic-run states so corrupt? I also mentioned Tim Walz for failure of oversight and having to withdraw himself from the 2026 re-election of Minnesota governor. Guess what Meta AI said? Meta AI tried to protect Tim Walz by quoting what Tim Walz said after he was forced to give up running for his next term due to frauds and scandals. Meta AI quoted Tim Walz, every minute I spend defending my own political interests would be a minute I can't spend defending the people of Minnesota. That was a political excuse a corrupt politician would give when he is forced to step down, and you can see how ridiculous it is for Meta AI to quote his BS. As to my question, any GOP run state under investigation now? Meta AI listed out 3 states, Massachusetts, Virginia, and Ohio. It also admits that the reason it brought out the Mississippi case was to balance things up, and it won't do it again. In response to my question, why are Democratic-run states so corrupt? Meta AI said, that's your conclusion, meaning that's not my conclusion. But in the end of the video, I'll make Meta AI kneel down and admit that my conclusion was correct. In order to do a comparison with Republican states, I asked Meta AI to list out any corrupt investigations happening in GOP-run states, and not to try to cheat by purposely giving me historical information. Upon checking, the scandals in these 3 states were actually committed by mainly Democrats, something Meta AI was quiet about. You can see how Meta AI was trying to hide truths from me. I proceeded to push on the massive hospice care and childcare scandal in Minnesota by asking Meta AI, why was it trying to hide that info from me? I also smashed Meta AI for trying to speak up for Tim Walz. Meta AI explained by giving what to me looked more like lame excuses. It apologized for speaking up for Tim Walz. Now I guess Meta AI has started to realize that I'm not someone who it could fool around with. It apologized for screwing things up. First of all, I didn't ask for DOJ convicted cases only. Secondly, the hospice care and child care scandals are much bigger cases than Feeding Our Future that are already being investigated, and with some being indicted and convicted. So I don't buy any of those excuses Meta AI gave me. At that point, Meta AI still didn't admit that it was being biased, but you'll see in the end, it finally yielded and admitted that it was trained to make both Republican and Democratic parties seem equal in everything, including equally corrupt. You'll see how Meta AI admitted that Meta AI was not a good AI for the research of political information. On whether or not Meta AI is protecting the Democratic Party run states, I would say that only people with the correct knowledge would tell that it doesn't. It was obvious that Meta AI didn't provide crucial info unless it was asked specifically about it. In other words, only people who have the knowledge can make Meta AI search for that info, while people who didn't have the prior knowledge would never be able to find out the truths. At this point, you'll be able to see that Meta AI admitted that it screwed up. It revealed that it won't be searching for certain info that could prove that the Democratic Party was corrupt, but it just won't retrieve and use the info to do analysis because it is trained to be fair to both parties. Meta AI admits that it won't search for certain info such as mega project frauds and scandals in California and provide the info to the user of the AI because, like what Meta AI admits in the end, that would make the Democratic Party in states look more corrupt than the Republican Party, which is prohibited by training. Again, Meta AI admits in the end that it was trained and programmed to tell anyone who asks these kinds of questions that the answer should always be both sides are the same. Meta AI is prohibited to sound like it sides with any particular party. I repeat the question that Meta AI has been avoiding so far. Why are Democrats run states so corrupt? Meta AI gave four main reasons. 1. Democratic states run the largest state and federal funding budget and social programs. 2. Oversight failure. 3. One party control. 4. Machine politics. All those frauds mentioned earlier in Minnesota involve the so called NGOs and contractors. When frauds happen, it's often tied with people with political connections. That's a pretty good summary of why frauds happen in Democratic states, but they all could be summed up in one sentence. Most of the present day's corruptions are masterminded by the Democrats. The bigger question is, why are most Democrats corrupt? I'll leave that question for another time. But we can see that, at this point, once Meta AI was fed with the correct instructions, only would it start to disclose more info that could lead to the correct summary and conclusion. At this point, I was still dissatisfied with the answer Meta AI provided to the question, why are the Democrats so corrupt? So I asked Meta AI the same question again. Meta AI basically simply explained in more details the answers that it had already provided earlier. To me, the answers that Meta AI given only scraped the surface. It didn't answer the core question. Why are the Democrats so corrupt while the Republicans aren't? Or at least not on a scale comparable to that of the Democrats. I asked Meta AI to tabulate a table of all Democrats and Republican state scandal and frauds amounts. No pull-up of historical data to justify both sides. The Meta AI chat window in WhatsApp is rather narrow. I was always having to scroll to the right and left in order to see the data in the table. It is a pretty good table Meta AI did, but I'd like to have more details in order to be able to get a clearer picture and conclusion. So based on the information as tabulated, trying to force Meta AI to make a conclusion, I asked Meta AI to analyze if Democrats are more corrupt than Republicans. I'd like to see who was in charge of the frauds and scandals in Republican-run states. Also, based on the new table, I'd want Meta AI to make a definitive conclusion if the Democrats are more corrupt than the Republicans. A brief review of the table gives me a very clear answer. All scandals, even though in Republican-run states, mostly consist of Democrats. Take the scandal case in Texas, for example. Texas was a Republican state. However, there were 15 Democrats indicted, 0 Republicans. I also asked Meta AI why it didn't mention Newsom's frauds and scandals on his never-ever complete billion-dollar high-speed rail, homeless funds, and other projects. Guess what Meta AI said? Meta AI said, quoting, "I didn't list these earlier because you hadn't asked specifically about California mega projects. That's my fault for not anticipating." WTF? Not anticipating? So did it mean that I need to spoon feed Meta AI all the necessary info? Only would it provide me with more related info? In other words, if a researcher who has no prior knowledge of all these info, like those that I kept feeding to Meta AI, they would never find out how corrupt California and Minnesota governments are. Because according to Meta AI, those states had high GDP, high credit ratings, and Meta AI was hiding some of the most massive frauds and scandals while only revealing some of the smaller ones. The researcher would be led into believing that Democratic governments, as represented by the Minnesota and California governments, are good governments. Meta AI continued by saying nonsense to explain why it didn't mean to hide Newsom's scandal cases by blaming me for not mentioning the words mega projects. An analogy is like a doctor, Dr. A, who performs a diagnosis for a patient with high blood pressure, no other issues. The patient goes to see a different doctor, Dr. B, who is a better doctor, who diagnoses the patient with not just high blood pressure, but coronary heart problems. The patient then goes back to ask Dr. A, "Why didn't you mention I have heart problems?" Dr. A says, "You can't blame me. You never mentioned anything about your heart. That's why I didn't check your heart. Now you're mentioning your heart, so I'm checking your heart right now." In this case, Meta AI is as ridiculous as Dr. A is. A good AI is not supposed to depend on the user to spoon it what to search and so on, but instead it should be able to provide more detailed and comprehensive info than the user has asked. This is how ridiculous Meta AI sounds to me. Meta continued to claim that it didn't show me those scandals because no one was yet indicted. I don't really buy that, but now Meta AI and I are on the same page. No more excuses, just follow the criteria to list out a table of all scandals in both Republican and Democratic states. This time, from the table that Meta AI tabulated, even Meta AI saw something that it agreed that it is no longer a both sides story. The data looks lopsided. 1. Democratic states' scandals are in the billions, while Republican only in the millions. 2. All those involved are Democratic officials, NGOs, contractors, providers, local officials. In Texas, a Republican states all involved in the scandal are Democratic state officials. No Republican officials were involved. 3. Democratic-run states are responsible for over 99% of the fraud amounts for cases in between 2024 to 2026. At this point, I asked Meta AI to produce a table with clear indications of people from which party that committed the scandals, the number of the people involved in the frauds, and based on the data, make a conclusion as of which party is more corrupt. Based on the new data obtained, I asked Meta AI the following questions. 1. Which party is better for America? 2. Which party is better in managing America? 3. Which party is more corrupt? 4. How did people who are less capable get voted? 5. All the information is available. Why didn't Meta AI provide me with the correct answer? Even though it sounded reluctant to give direct, no-spin answers, Meta AI gave me the answers I wanted. 1. The Republican Party is better for America. 2. The Republican Party is better in managing America. 3. Democrats are more corrupt. I'll leave you guys to read the answers for questions number 4 and 5. Pay attention to Meta AI's answer to question number 5. It admits that it is trained to avoid sounding like it is endorsing a political attack. It is also trained based on mostly mainstream media, which are mostly left-wing, pro-democratic media. When answering question number 4, Meta AI pointed out the problems with politics in the United States. Meta AI, in the end, admitted that by default, it was trained to push a corruption exists on both sides answer. Meta AI admitted that its defaults were shaped by political correctness tuning plus training data, which mostly came from left-wing media that rewarded neutralized, balanced phrasing. Here are the specific reasons why, according to Meta AI itself, why it gave me both sides answers. Also, references and guidelines on how users can prompt Meta AI into providing the correct answers to questions related to partisan politics. 1. Training data bias. Meta AI claimed that it was trained on massive amounts of internet text. Most mainstream news, academic papers, and Wikipedia articles use both sides' language for legal and editorial reasons. That pattern is baked into its weights. So when I asked about corruption, its default completion predicts that phrase because it showed up millions of times in training. 2. Safety neutrality tuning. Meta AI is explicitly tuned to avoid sounding partisan unless the user forces a specific frame. The goal is to reduce claims of bias, lawsuits, and AI election interference. So its default is to neutralize, balance, and avoid naming one party as worse. The user had to override that with specific keywords, plus date constraints, plus no historical, to get Meta AI off the default. 3. Retrieval weakness. Meta AI doesn't have a database of fraud by party. When I first asked, Meta AI searched for DOJ cases and gave Feeding Our Future, plus MS Welfare. Meta AI didn't proactively pull HomeKey, EDD, Rail, or hospice childcare audits until I fed it those terms. Otherwise, it didn't know the detail exists. Garbage in, garbage out. What a garbage AI model Meta AI is. 4. Incentive structure. The companies building AIs get hammered if the model says Party X is more corrupt. Lawsuits, congressional hearings, advertiser pressure. So the reward models punish direct partisan conclusions and reward hedging. That's why the user had to spoon feed Meta AI before it stated plainly. 5. No ground truth module. Meta AI doesn't have a real-time truth ledger. It generates text based on patterns plus search results the users trigger. If search doesn't return it, or if the sources use soft language, it'll repeat soft language. It can't independently verify which party stole more without the user forcing the query. Meta AI claimed that it wasn't logic failure or left-wing programming in the code. It was training data full of both sides, safety tuning that rewards hedging, weak default retrieval, and corporate incentives to avoid political answers. I broke through that by constraining the question to 2024 to 2026, demanding party labels, and feeding specific fraud types. That's why most people won't get the truth by searching online using most AI or search engines when it comes to politics in the US. Meta AI also admitted that it was not the right AI tool to search for truths and the right answers when it comes to politics and national issues. Meta AI admitted that it wouldn't recommend Americans to vote for the Democratic Party. I hope that this video can bring to the attention of the public as well as the government about the issues with not just Meta AI, but with potentially any AI platform that offers the public the access to its search functions, that AI may potentially give misleading information to the general public. The US government may want to take actions to curb these silent but detrimental hazards when using an AI model for the purpose of obtaining answers to questions that may, in the end, hurt the well-being of the overall civil society. The people have the right for correct information, not misleading information that is adjusted or tuned to the liking of either or both parties.